Dobre. Nema šta. Japan luriidon. Hän menevät new. Vidimo što ima na rotaciji danas.
Let the games begin.
Ovaj nije više na rotaciji.
Our world is worth fighting for.
Ajmo s njim nabit level 5. Kako ova dvojica još razmisli šta će.
I stand ready.
All shall suffer.
Ej, fali im tank, jel tako? Tank bi nam bio dosadan. Evo, ako zapliješi, mi smo dovoljni. Šta je čore? Vidimo šta je. Ima nešto da naćemo da sluša. Ima, PlayStation is in trouble. Da vidimo.
Hello and welcome to This Is. We have breaking news, so breaking, so new.
The games industry continues to be rocked by the unexpected news that Microsoft has bought Activision Blizzard for a whopping almost $70 billion, which means that all of these franchises right here and all of these companies and studios now belong to Microsoft, or will once the deal closes before fiscal 2023 ends, according to both Microsoft and Activision. And until then, this is all going to raise a lot of questions, namely, how is this going to affect the landscape of gaming as a whole? How is this going to affect the competition? And, well, we're already starting to see what kinds of effects it's having on Sony, with them recently having lost a huge amount of market value in a single day after investors got wind of the news and reacted as they did. Investors tend to be pretty fickle in nature, and so that has all led to this report from Bloomberg reporting that Microsoft deal with Activision has wiped $20 billion off of Sony's market value in a day. More specifically, scrolling down, you'll find that Sony Group Core shares fell 13% in Tokyo on Wednesday, which amounts to that $20 billion. And if you look up Sony's stock on Google, you can see the dip for yourself. You can see just what a major crater there is right here between January 14th and January 20th. It is climbing back up a little bit, but there is no denying the impact that the announcement has had on Sony's market value. Not an insubstantial amount, but certainly something that can be recovered as long as Sony and PlayStation continue to perform well with console sales and software sales. And given how many exclusives and awesome games PlayStation's got coming out this year, I have little doubt that, Sony performance-wise, in terms of the PlayStation aspect of their business. They're not in any trouble per se, but the competition is certainly getting a lot more intense. And so you've got analysts saying stuff like Sony will have a monumental challenge on its hands to stand on its own in this war of attrition, with Call of Duty now most likely to be added exclusively to the Game Pass roster. The headwinds for Sony are only going to get tougher. And with Call of Duty being one of the most popular gaming franchises in the world, the prospect of that series coming exclusively to Xbox and PC, and it being a day one Game Pass release, is going to have a significant impact on this landscape. Another analyst said Sony will struggle to match Microsoft in terms of money it can spend to buy popular game IP. Indeed, Sony might be a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but Microsoft is in another league of its own as a trillion-dollar corporation, so it can afford to make massive purchases like this, where Sony has to be more careful about where they spend their money. But Sony has the advantage of having cultivated so many of their studios for so many years. Microsoft is only now getting into the game of acquiring studios and cultivating them as part of the Xbox umbrella. Sony and PlayStation have been at this for a while, and so that's how they're able to consistently output such high-quality first-party releases. But Microsoft is certainly now beginning to catch up with all these acquisitions and their dedication to letting these studios shine. So it'll be interesting to see how this competition develops, and healthy competition is always a good thing. I've always thought the whole notion of console wars was silly. I see it more as potential healthy competition that will push both companies to go further and further to outdo each other and themselves. But indeed, falling shares illustrate investors are worried that Sony may not be able to keep winning if the industry shifts away from the hardware-based model, referring to how Xbox does have an start on Game Pass, which is a supplement to traditional gaming that serves as a Netflix for games, where you can not only locally download them to your hardware, but you can also stream them via the cloud, or at least that's where Microsoft is headed with this, essentially having everything under one banner, both local hardware gaming and cloud gaming, and both the subscription model of Game Pass and the traditional. And while only time will tell how the Game Pass endeavor will ultimately pan out, so far the results have been very positive, with Microsoft having recently reported that Game Pass is at 25 million subscribers, and that number is only bound to go higher as all these franchises from studios recently acquired by Microsoft release on Game Pass on day one for a very reasonable monthly price. But at the end of the day, what sells is quality, and as long as Sony and PlayStation continue to release high-quality games and keep pushing the boundaries, I think they'll be in a healthy position as well, business-wise. But Microsoft is certainly encroaching, and they're a much stronger competition than they were during the PS4 and Xbox One era. Now, beyond investors reacting to all of this, Sony has actually issued a response to questions about Activision Blizzard games and their potential exclusivity on Xbox and PC. According to a statement that Sony provided to the Wall Street Journal, Sony expects Microsoft to keep Activision games multi-platform. The specific quote provided reads, "We expect that Microsoft will abide by contractual agreements to ensure Activision games are multi-platform." Now, it's important to note that Sony is likely referring to existing contracts. There are some deals in place that happened before Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard happened, and those games and those deals will continue to exist. Those games will continue to be multi-platform, will continue to be on PlayStation, hold or anything like that. But there's going to come a threshold that's going to be passed where Microsoft will have fulfilled all of their deals and obligations, and future projects will be out. After that threshold, it'll be up to Microsoft to decide whether they want to keep Xbox and PC exclusive, or whether they want to release those games on PlayStation and Nintendo platforms. And at that point, I get the sense that Xbox is going to make those games exclusive, because it doesn't make sense to spend $70 billion and then give that to your competition. And sure, it could be argued that Xbox could generate sales by releasing their games on PlayStation and Nintendo platforms, but the goal is to raise the value of Xbox Game Pass, and there's no better way to do that than by promising all these games will be now on Game Pass on day one for that low monthly fee, and that you will only also confirmed that existing contractual obligations will be fulfilled. An article by GamesIndustry.biz was reported that Activision has also confirmed that it will not be removing any games from other platforms as a result of the deal. An employee FAQ filed with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the firm said it will honor all existing commitments, close, existing being the key word. Anything past that, any new games, any new deals that crop up following Microsoft's full acquisition of Activision Blizzard, it will be up to Microsoft. And I just don't see a company giving their competition any leverage on this front with a massive purchase worth almost $70 billion. Now, Microsoft did chime in on the conversation. They did have something to say about what the future holds for these franchises' ability to be in other platforms. According to Bloomberg's report, Microsoft plans to keep making some of Activision's games for PlayStation consoles. They'll also keep some content exclusive to Xbox, said a person familiar with the company's thinking. And then Phil Spencer said in an interview, quote, "I'll just say to players out there who are playing Activision Blizzard on Microsoft's platform, it is not our intent to pull communities away from that platform, and we remain committed to that." Now, notice how he's speaking in the present tense. For those who are playing Activision games right now, Activision Blizzard games right now on Sony's platform, those games will not be taken away. But future games that have not been released on Sony's platform, one of them, Spencer hasn't strictly commented, but it seems fairly obvious that they're going to go the exact same route that they did when they acquired Bethesda, where they're going to honor current existing contracts and obligations, like how Deathloop, despite it being a Bethesda-published game, thereby making it a Microsoft and Xbox IP, released as a timed exclusive for PlayStation, because there was already a deal in place for this title, and so this is one of those strange situations that happen in transition. But outside of situations like these, we've seen Microsoft confirm that upcoming Bethesda games like Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 will be Xbox exclusive, and it will be the case for many of their IP acquisitions and future projects. Why would they do any different for Activision Blizzard, for future Activision Blizzard releases outside of existing obligations with such massive amount of money spent, even more than the $7.5 billion spent on acquiring ZeniMax Media? Microsoft and Xbox are definitely stepping up their game this generation. They're definitely competing a lot more fiercely, and in the case of Activision Blizzard releases outside of existing obligations with such massive amount of money spent, even more than the 7.5 ZeniMax Media. Microsoft and Xbox are definitely stepping up their game this generation. They're definitely competing a lot more fiercely, and in the case of Activision Blizzard, while this deal does come with certain problems, like how Bobby Kotick will be getting a major bonus before his exit, or the fact that many Activision Blizzard titles or franchises that used to be third-party and multi-platform probably won't end up being that with future releases outside of existing contracts and obligations. Not see release because Activision Blizzard has been in such a downtrodden phase with leadership. I think Microsoft taking over could potentially be a really positive thing under the leadership of Phil Spencer. I think Activision Blizzard can make a major turnaround both in its culture and in its quality of game releases, where it's no longer Bobby Kotick demanding that they release billion-dollar hit after billion-dollar hit at a rate that is just unreasonable. Hopefully Microsoft will give them enough autonomy while being hands-on enough to hold leaders and Activision Blizzard accountable. Microsoft and Xbox will have their work cut out for them to get Activision Blizzard back into shape and to organize all this into a cohesive, well-oiled machine that releases high-quality games in a well-paced fashion, but they certainly are taking the endeavor very seriously given how massive this purchase was and how committed they are to this. So it'll be interesting to see how all this plays out, whether Sony will be able to keep up with Microsoft's aggressive business tactic on this generation of consoles. But for now, I think we're going to get really great games from both companies. I think we're going to start seeing healthier competition. And already we're seeing positive signs under Phil Spencer's leadership of Activision Blizzard. He's already said that he's committed to addressing the workplace issues at Activision Blizzard, stating that I believe the leaders there believe in the opportunity they have in their plan, noting his confidence the issues will be resolved. We're definitely going to hold you to that, Phil. We'll see what happens in time. And he also expressed excitement about reviving old, long-dormant IPs. He said, I was looking at the IP list last argue, I should know this, but I think it got excellent. The Washington Post put it that Spencer's excitement may have mirrored the enthusiasm of a StarCraft player using the long-dormant franchise's logo in Microsoft's acquisition announcement. Franchises that Bobby Kotick would never touch because they're, I don't know, not profitable enough, not monetizable enough, whatever. You might see a complete 180 on that with Phil Spencer, who seems a lot more open about revisiting these old franchises, modernizing them, and bringing the most out of them, and keeping a community who have been disillusioned by how some of these franchises have been treated happier than they would have been under Bobby Kotick's continued leadership. On that topic, Phil Spencer added this: we're hoping that we'll be able to work with them when the deal closes to make sure we have resources to work on franchises that I love from my childhood and that the teams really want to do. Looking forward to these conversations. I really think it's about adding resources and increasing capability. I certainly love if Phil Spencer and team fulfill these ambitions. I wish the Xbox team the best of luck with these endeavor, and I hope the results from all of this are ultimately positive
to all who serve the Gravekeeper,
including Activision Blizzard's culture and Activision Blizzard and all the studios just enhancing their capabilities to just make great games that are driven by passion and creativity rather than as we wait and see how all this unfolds, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the latest developments surrounding Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time.
I doubt that.
Justice has come.
Right. Heroes, I have opened a tunnel near our core that leads to the battleground center. Use it well.
What? I mean, I can do that. I'm open to my tunnel as well.
Good. Heroes, the altars rise.
I must retreat. Agreed.
Disappoint me. You have done well, heroes. Let the Gravekeeper know my power. This realm will be mine, and mine alone. You will fall, Raven.
This is the way of the Nexus.
Doomed to the Gravekeeper.
I must retreat.
Looking good. Watch out, everyone.
Why not? Keep the pressure on. Enemies of the light, beware.
You better hurry. The altars rise again. Killing spree. Yes, slay them in my name.
A well-timed heal, friend.
I am lord of this realm, and it will not be stolen from me.
Thank the light.
Fire upon the core! Shatter it!
Why not?
Choose a tower.
I must retreat. A wise decision. I am the hammer of justice.
No. No.
A tower has been lost.
Silver hand.
Lay claim to the altars. Do not disappoint me.
I must retreat.
Defeat. MVP. I suppose.
Infernal shrines.
Meow. Meow. Meow.
Oh, this is my jam!
Meow. 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 Meow.
Here we go.
some lives.
Need a light?
No.
Let's cut forward.
The battle begins in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Show them that they came here to die.
All right. Enough energy.
First blood.
I told you to watch your back. Switched in silence. All right. Can't do that yet. My blades are ready. I don't have enough energy. That gives me an idea.
Choose a talent.
Yeah, that'll cause some damage.
You leave. C'ha filo conosciuto.
My blades are ready. Keep at it. I'll be back in a minute.
Active soon. Prepare yourselves for the slaughter.
The shadows part.
Ciao mamma, perché mi faccio sceno HP da sera.
will serve the burning hells. Enemy slain.
I'll take more where that came from.
Love you're not healing. Can't do that.
Fear not, mortal. Evil always finds a way. We have summoned a mortal punisher. Choose a talent.
I am late in the
Oh, some merch would hit the spot.
Our punisher has been slain.
I carve my own path. Always love a pocket healer. Retreat! I carve my own path. Swift and fast. Thanks, friend.
Brutalize them.
Not enough energy.
Jeps.
Double kill.
Still a few tricks up my sleeves. Not enough energy. Sindor. Now you're thinking like a rogue. Blade in the dark.
Shrine will be ready.
We need to defend our fort. Not healing.
Activate now. Heavens will fall before us.
Šta je tu? Amiro Miris. Jesu.
Don't
killing spree. Choose a talent. Brutalize them.
You're not healing. You're done. Let's come forward.
To je ovo. Operetan. A, nemoj. Nisam izvedio ja. Definitivno ćemo izgubiti. Ali ej! Ljudi imaju Lost Vikingem, imamo žabu. A odmah cuka nas ova žaba pustio je vikinge da idu da suka i slobodne strane. U ramenu mi je da budem assassin, ja idem dolo na do njih suka. Šta ima kod tebe, ma? Pa dobro, teško bi gorio žabi. Popljujemo, polu.
The enemy has defeated our Punisher.
Sjelo je go.
Time for you to die. Fine by me.
Loša. Trebalo sam ono kebeta fokusirati. Ajmo ovo. Molim?
The merch would hit the spot.
The shadows.
Žubi. Kakav si večeras malo da si igramo? Ups.
Nice one.
Time for you to die.
Nisam ni grodan da. Šta se vam dešava, mogu smo
Endoral amulet.
Ups, tek, nećemo vam. Pa mogu smo rekao, kad opet budeš igru, kad budeš imao vremena da igramo.
Claim it in my name. Quickly! Punisher awaits!
Amare ovako nastavimo samo. Samo ne znam, ako nema točan talent je sad ko budemo s tobom, pošto ti imaš nubu. drveta, oni talent, ja ne imam, ne znam, to ću morat sam igrat.
Those fools cannot best you again.
Ovo je izgubljeno zrenje. Ovo je 100% izgubljeno.
Is lost.
Viš, kad ti Nedim gledate ja na mobitelu, onda imam 3 gledatelja.
Arcane Punisher comes. End its wretched existence.
Someone's getting a blade to the neck for that.
Šta mi ne reći, ti moraš igrati?
What? One of our forts has fallen? Finally! Their Punisher has fallen before us!
Always love a pocket game. Still a few tricks up my sleeves.
Suka.
Choose a talent.
Shadows and that.
Može. Može.
Fine with me. That gives me an idea. Now you're thinking like a rogue.
Sviđam se kako ovo je.
Good idea. Time for you to die. Close shot.
が敵を食らう
Pa! Ne, nisam te vidio.
You will take it for me.
Let's cut forward.
Može se. Evo ti imate svoj prije. Kako me ovako čovjek nađe?
Punisher moves. Let him tear moves apart.
Hold sharp teeth. Loving that healing. Killing spree goodbye.
Opi malo HP dosta. Deathmatch stanimat dosta.
The enemy is attacking our core. Our foe has summoned a mortar punisher.
Daj, probegam.
Enderal Amulet.
Our keep has fallen. What are you doing?
My blades are ready.
Angel's Punisher has been destroyed.
Be there shortly.
The enemy is attacking our core. Annihilate! Double kill! Quad kill!
Jorko bježi bez njega.
Enderal Anumenor.
Killing spree! Enemy is attacking our
Now you're
core.
thinking like a rogue.
Killing spree is over.
Taman da kodim do WC-a. I vratim se tu i to.
Our core is under attack.
Our ally requires our help. Shake it off, Valera.
Vjerujem jedan čovjek. On je bio mali bogat.
That gives me an idea.
Power gathers within the shrine. It will be made to serve. Enemy slain.
This time you die for real.
Utilize them. Know what to do. Slay the mountains. Unleash the Punisher. Go now!
I carve my own. Within seconds. I'll be not healing.
Enemy slain.
Oh, nice one.
I need help. Quickly, I need help. The shadows.
Hadi hadi. Odi vam.
Time for you to die. I don't think so.
Pain Punisher shall serve us well. The enemy is attacking our core. An enemy force falls. Annihilated. Your killing spree is over. Killing spree.
No. 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 No.
Let me help you.
No.
Heaven's forces have slain our Punisher.
No.
I need help.
No. No.
Fort destroyed.
No.
All right. Shake it off, Valera. Enderline on
They will miss that fort.
Time for you to die. Good idea.
Eyes there.
Always underestimate me. The shadows part.
Our core is under attack.
Kako su sve tri živoljeno?
Oh, nice one. Some merch would hit the spot.
Another shrine will be ready soon.
Čo ideš, evo ti majku svoju?
Keep at it. I'll be back in a minute.
Activate it now. The heavens will fall before us. Double kill. Triple kill.
Way to go. Thank the core.
Killing spree.
Way to go.
Our core is under attack. Punisher, freeze the Angel's forces and shatter them!
For the Sindora. Swift and silent.
Šta je bilo? Šta je bilo? Ja! Ups.
Perfect execution.
Our Punisher has been
Aj,
found!
mrtav.
Let's cut forward. Taste cold, sharp steel. I don't think so.
The enemy is attacking our core.
For the Sindora. Cloak and shadow.
Your killing spree is over. Our core is
Jovi.
under attack.
Čo to ljubi? Ovo to ljubi. Čo to ljubi?
MVP.
Mau. 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 Beep. Ljubi, Čoto. Čoto ljubi, da. 169. Pozdrav. Dajem Sune.
Lily. Mau. Mau.
I stand ready.
Man.
Tremble before me. I will not be denied.
Dove stai? Com'è?
Victory above all.
Ordinary things, šta mi ti radiš? Ajde, malo vidimo. 1, 2, 3.
They say the planet is just one big coin-operated perpetual motion machine. But money doesn't make the world go round, credit does. Why collect flattened cotton fibers with dead people on them when you can shoot photons out of an electric rectangle to spend money that isn't yours yet? Whether it's for a car, rent, or life-saving medical treatment, the banks have never been happier to let you accumulate debt. While that's very nice of them, they will want their money back at some point, along with all the interest that they've pre-approved you to fall into. With hidden fees, eye-watering APRs, and eye-straining small print, they will suck as much money as they can out of you while you're still horizontal. But this is nothing new. Credit has been with us for longer than coins. In fact, the only reason that someone invented cash in the first place was to keep track of all that credit. Around 5,000 years ago, when civilization was still rolling into existence, ancient Mesopotamia was the place to be. Sumerian society literally set up shop in present-day Iraq as humanity's centre of trade and agriculture. It promptly popularised things like wearing shoes, getting drunk, and maths, which was necessary to keep track of whose round it was. Credit was recorded on individual clay tablets, meaning that in ancient times, money were just inscrutable numbers on a rectangle with your name on it. But if your harvest was bad or you swapped your supplies for beer, you'd risk having to fork your family members over as collateral. It could be argued that providing and recording credit is actually the foundation to any functional civilization. Because if you can't agree on who owes who what, that's when things start to get a bit stabby. It was a similar situation in ancient Babylon, where the earliest surviving laws on borrowing money were written in the Code of Hammurabi. Ancient Babylonians banks cunningly set maximum interest rates, and every loan had to be witnessed by a local official. Though, again, failure to pay back your loan could result in 3 years of forced labour, for you or for the wife and or children you could sell in your place. Although the merciful King Hammurabi did make sure that you'd be freed after 3 years.
Once someone invented money that you could jangle in the 6th century BC, things got a lot easier. The ancient Greeks and Romans handed out coins, largely to facilitate cross-cultural trade and to spread their imperial influence. Roman emperors helpfully printed their faces on their coins so their subjects would know who to hand them back to when tax season came along. While coins were all the rage in the Roman Empire, large transactions were still done with credit, as it would otherwise mean handing over a wheelbarrow's worth of Augustus's, which would have been inconvenient as there weren't that many coins in circulation and no one had invented the wheelbarrow yet.
It was at this point I realised that the history of credit is basically the history of humans. So let's fast forward a few centuries. First of all, the Roman Empire falls and some new religions pop up that don't approve of lending money. This era of religious piety and illiteracy is commonly known as the Dark Ages because everyone was poor and stupid. That changed in the 1300s when God decimated 1/3 of his most adoring fans with the Black Death. While this was probably the worst event in human history so far, the bright side was that those who survived made lots of money. Post-plague, wages for ordinary people went up for the first time ever, so they could afford gaudy things like more food and precious silk. Due to there being fewer people around, many innovations in automation were made. People made better tools, had better ideas, and built bigger ships to escape their disease-ridden countries. Some of them made it to the New World, where they swapped their fancy European diseases for some precious metals and exotic flavour dusts. Banks handed out more loans for these spice-finding missions, and global trade exploded. Businesses got so profitable that some of them were even able to take over entire subcontinents with their own armies. Businesses had access to lines of credit with easy interest payments for centuries, but the hopeful consumer, as in someone who wanted to hopefully consume some bread, had to make do without. Speaking of which, I've got some bills to pay. Hey you! Are you terrified and bewildered by a modern world that you can neither control or understand? Well, why don't you flick the bean into your morning routine by subscribing to Morning Brew? Morning Brew is a free daily newsletter delivered Monday to Sunday, getting you up to date on business, finance and tech in just 5 minutes. Before the brew, I'd spend my AM waking up in the park that I accidentally fell asleep in the night before. But now I'm a successful businessman who owns over 5 fully operational jet skis. While traditional news is just failed actors spoon-feeding you their target demographics' preferred worldview, Morning Brew is witty, informative, and relevant to what's actually going on. I'm updated every morning on the businesses killing it in the market and on all those money-losing logos being propped up by venture capital and the gig economy. Click the link below and subscribe so Morning Brew can pour piping hot knowledge into your eye holes every goddamn morning.
Until the arrival of credit cards, if you wanted money from the bank that wasn't yours, you had to use consumer credit. In comparison, the 19th century had been a lot lighter with its cash, in part because of a Puritan culture of thrift, and because there was a lot less cool shit to buy. The early 20th century had seen US factories pump out washing machines, furniture, refrigerators and radios, all of which could be bought in installment plans. Banks were happy to hand out loans directly to consumers, as they fast became one of their most lucrative sources of income. Before approving your loan, though, the bank would have to look at your wages and your face, because back in those days, your local bank branch manager probably knew who you were and whether you could be trusted. But when those sexy, shiny new Model Ts started driving off the assembly line for the first time, most families hadn't saved enough to afford one, but still wanted one. By 1918, General Motors loaned consumers the money themselves. With just a 35% down payment, families could literally drive themselves to death. And who can blame them? Exactly 100 years ago, everyone was just trying to have fun after that terrible global pandemic. So people distracted themselves with crazy new dance trends, pearl-clutching moral panics, and getting rich from wild speculation on the stock market.
You know, like in the now times. Banks had been dumping customer cash into a stock market that had been hitting dingers for decades. So to get more, they started to approve riskier and riskier loans. Anyway, all that happened just before the 1929 stock market crash, also known as the opening act to the Great Depression. Back in the real world, banks were running out of money and shuttering, meaning that ordinary people no longer had access to the savings that they may have taken a lifetime to accumulate. To ensure something like this would definitely never happen again, the government passed the United States Banking Act of 1933, which was passed to better separate commercial and investment banking. Essentially, it stopped banks from using as much of your money in their risky, speculative operations.
As the banks got regulated, corporations, clients, and the humble hobo moved to new cities to work, while the government got all those unemployed bread wanters to build roads between them. With a newly hypermobile population still paying off the interest on that 10-year-old rust bucket hunk of shit death trap Model T, people swapped jobs and stayed more frequently. With everybody moving around, the bean counter at the bank probably didn't work. So they needed to find a new way to get all these dust-covered strangers into debt. In the 1940s, big oil companies had already created and proliferated pro-code credit cards among their drivers to facilitate long, cashless journeys. The idea then spread to fancy retail stores who gave lines of credit to loyal or desirable customers to inspire brand loyalty. In 1949, proud businessman Frank McNamara finished a meal with clients before realizing that he'd left his wallet in the soup. His wife covered the bill, but the lasting embarrassment would inspire him to change the world forever. He returned to Major's a year later with a piece of cardboard, which he convinced the owner to accept instead of money. Frank pulled that same trick with another 27 restaurants and hotels, who all agreed to accept his new Diners Club credit card. It immediately became a high society status symbol that told the table that dinner was on you.
The same was true for the exclusive American Express card, made for the convenience of frequent air travelers. At first, credit was advertised as a lifeline, a way to access money you didn't have but needed right away. Awkward, relatable situations, like the aftermath of a non-specific maritime disaster, from which you were the sole survivor. To the jet set, it was a 4-inch status symbol that you could keep in your trousers and slap on the table after dinner, inspiring jealousy and war. It made appeals to adventurousness, but it was mostly used by businessmen who were nervous about getting mugged between the airport and the airport Hilton.
No credit cards.
It was a card only for people who knew that tomorrow's paycheck would cover today's indulgence. This gave the card prestige, but it kept profits slim.
Ask the obliging Bank of America for a jar of soothing instant money, M-O-N-E-Y.
It would be Bank of America executive Joseph P. Williams who would first experiment with handing out an all-purpose credit card to the unwashed masses. It started in Fresno, California, where 60,000 households received a card and a $500 line of credit to spend across town. Fresno citizens gathered around checkout counters to watch people not pay for their groceries. Joe was so inspired by his own success that Bank AmeriCard was launched in Los Angeles before they really knew how Fresno's happy shoppers would handle their new debt rectangles. Just a year later, the Californian rollout of the first real credit card had led to widespread fraud and a $19 million loss for Bank of America. It taught the industry an expensive but valuable lesson. If someone who needs credit gets credit, they're probably going to spend it before they read the rules that the card came wrapped in. Joe and his team had underestimated the amount of delinquent accounts by about 500%, which wasn't ideal when they also hadn't bothered to set up a collections department. Joe resigned in minor disgrace. He had blown the launch of what would eventually become the bank's most profitable toy. But first they needed to find the right balance, getting users only to accrue the amount of interest that they could manage to pay off. For the first half of the 60s, only 10 new credit cards entered the market. But once Bank Americard profits got too big to keep quiet, banks large and small got involved. Mass, unregulated card dumps would pile over 100 million credit cards on the nation's collective doormat over the next 12 years. Several regional banks got together to form MasterCard, Bank Americard's most successful rival. Eventually, MasterCharge became MasterCard and Bank Americard turned into Visa, both now independent from the banks that created them. They are now sort of like the middlemen, profiting by facilitating these card payments. But they don't make any money on interest. That is still the business of the banks. The banks did try to wrestle control away from Visa and MasterCard and hemorrhaged money in the attempt.
Even in a blizzard, the city never sleeps.
Citibank attempted to acquire pre-existing cards like the American Express imitator Carte Blanche, the only card that gave free advertising to its competitors, inexplicably presenting itself as the card you got when you were done collecting all the others.
I have a Carte Blanche card, but I need an American Express card and a bank card too.
Because there isn't any one credit card in the world that's accepted everywhere, not even Carte Blanche.
That's why I carry these. Everyone should have at least 3 of the best credit cards in the world, including me. And I'm the president of Carte Blanche.
Citibank ended up losing over $500 million on its credit card operations alone between 1979 and 1981. MasterCharge, though, broke through with an ingenious campaign that just focused on the magical technology that allowed you to IOU a Chevrolet Monte Carlo.
Chevrolet invites you to think of yourselves in a new Monte Carlo.
The company found even more success when they started advertising their card as a totem of personal empowerment and clout.
You take HotS? You take MasterCharge, don't you?
MasterCharge? You've just seen clout in action.
MasterCharge wants to give you all the clout you're working for. So when you shop, you can say,
I'm in charge.
That's real clout.
When you carry MasterCharge, you carry clout.
Thanks to cheaper competition from abroad, American industrial jobs declined heavily in the mid-1970s. The OPEC oil embargo sparked a deep recession and energy shortages across the Western world. Flush with billions in embargo bucks, the Gulf states then dumped petrochemical dollars in stable institutions like US banks. Citibank more than covered its credit card losses as deposits rose from $45 billion to $70 billion in just 4 years.
Despite getting everyone into debt, banks were still struggling to make any money on their credit card operations, as years of nearly double-figure inflation and restrictions on interest rates kept a stranglehold on profits. Luckily, good fortune was just around the corner. For the banks. The industrial sector was still shedding employees like waste metal, meaning that there were a lot fewer union jobs to go around. So the next generation would grow up in a job market with unstable employment and fewer insured benefits like healthcare and an education. This change would finally usher in an era of unprecedented profits for the banks, as it turned huge swathes of Americans into their perfect creditors.
Every credit card user falls somewhere on what I like to call the sucker spectrum. On the far left here, we have the sensible and or affluent credit card user. For them, the card is just a convenience. They pay their bills every month and never accrue interest. And banks hate these people because they don't make any money off them unless they have a fancy card with a high annual fee. The banks call these people deadbeats, even though they're anything but. On the other side of the spectrum are the suckers who play themselves. People who accrue so much credit card debt that they never fully pay it off. People who declare bankruptcy or die in debt. Now, the bank doesn't like these people either, but luckily the losses that they accrue are mitigated by the large portion of suckers who live on their left. This is the bank's ideal credit card user. Someone who accrues a pretty decent chunk of interest and takes their sweet time in paying it back. Maybe they have a low-wage job and they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they'll probably miss a few payments during periods of unemployment, bad health, or careless stupidity.
And in the following decade, banks learned how to reel these suckers in. In the early 1980s, factories were shuttering across the Western world, as brand new ones were springing up in the East to make cheap plastic crap for these newly smooth-handed service economies. Countries where economic growth was now highly dependent on consumer spending. Faced with declining real wages and corporate downsizing, a shoe-faced ex-actor presided over a wave of financial deregulation. For the first time in American history, there were now no legal restrictions on the interest rates that banks could charge on their credit cards. They could also approve them for whoever they wanted, and they could pretty much buy you anything you wanted at the mall. The Discover card was introduced by Sears in 1985 as the People's Card. Free for anyone who was willing to stomach its then very high 18.9% APR. It was marketed alongside aspirational images of roided up pole graspers with choirs proclaiming your freedom to blow your paycheck ahead of time.
This is the dawn. This is the dawn. The dawn of Discover. The Discover card.
This was a decade-long trend in advertising. Credit cards were now tickets to a world of luxury and instant gratification. In the same year, MasterCard decided subtlety was for cowards, acting like they were handing out free round-the-world tickets to Botox-blasted yuppies.
I got my bottles in Bimini.
I bought my skis in Aspen.
No, Switzerland. I bought my tan in Spain. Olay.
Now that everyone was carrying plastic, the real victims weren't the debt-saddled masses, but the rich who no longer felt special because their pockets were quiet. Companies that charge an annual fee were forced to find other ways to turn their products into status symbols.
Flight 139 leaving in 20 minutes. It's only in first class.
I'll take it.
The American Express card contains a single word that makes every other card seem like just a piece of plastic. Member.
American Express massaged their members to satisfaction with free air miles and other benefits. Other large banks created their own premium cards, sparking a decades-long benefit war between companies who were competing for wealthy wallet space. They offer discounts on luxury brands, membership point schemes, access to airport lounges, low interest or no interest for extended periods. Banks, today and then, frequently lose money in trying to seduce rich clients to their premium cards. But the profits made on the high-interest cards for the rest of us more than subsidize these benefits. In other words, the money made from the average debt muncher was providing discounts for smug 90s icons and their 16-year-old girlfriends.
Congratulations, you are 1 million shoppers!
I love this card. Look, I know what some of you are thinking right now. If you get into credit card debt, isn't that your fault? The rules of the game come wrapped around the card you play it with. So if you go on a spending spree before you read them, isn't that kind of on you? The reckless credit card user, unable to resist the urge to shop, gamble, and snort their way into debt, is a useful figure for the industry. If credit is a game you lose by being bad, then its rules are fair, and it's your fault for agreeing to them. Nearly everyone plans to pay their card off. But life is more unpredictable than any of us like to think. Banks helpfully provide their minimum monthly repayments on their bills, appealing to our blind optimism. But the only reason they do this is to maximize your opportunity to fuck up or get fucked over. By losing your job or getting sued, divorced, or cancer, you'll probably miss a few payments and accrue some interest. It is in this manner, rather than through reckless spending, that people find themselves on the south side of the sucker spectrum. By the time the Hoff was singing the Cold War's swan song, Americans were borrowing more money than at any time in history. For many, credit was now the most friction-free way to provide household essentials and to solve emergencies. By 1995, America's average personal savings rate had plummeted to an all-time low. And this isn't too surprising, given that the price of things like homes and higher education was soaring. In 1989, a FICO credit score became the only way to convince the bank to let you own progressively larger chunks of the house that they buy for you. What previous generations had saved for were now out of reach for many households. But an N64, well, that was just one swipe away. Citibank and most of its competitors were posting record profits, while their advertising departments tripled their budgets. Seeing tumbleweeds in their customer savings accounts, banks appealed to them by promoting cards with sweepstake promotions and charity giveaways, giving back to the lucky few some of the cash they'd been siphoning off them for the last 20 years. Satisfied with gobbling a nation's savings up month by month, the financial sector decided they wanted to take on more risk and lobbied for greater freedom, persuading President Garment Soiler, the first president without direct memory of the Great Depression, to wipe away the last of that era's financial regulations. Banks were now allowed to bundle home, car, and credit card debt and sell them as securities on secondary markets, creating increasingly complex and risky derivative contracts.
But, Madam Speaker, I believe this legislation in its current form will do more harm than good. It will lead to fewer banks and financial service providers, increased charges and fees for individual consumers and small businesses, diminished credit for rural America, and taxpayer exposure to potential losses should a financial conglomerate fail.
But for the first 7 years of the new millennium, the New Year ball would drop over the Discover logo, and the US personal savings rate dropped with it. New cards were rolled out with hidden fees and deceptive deferred interest rates. By this time, most people had figured out that credit was a game, but some were still convinced that the banks wanted you to win. Reward programs are still seen by many as prizes for hard work and smart habits, when they're anything but. They are simply incentives to spend. A gravitational pull on the right side of the sucker spectrum, which is where we'd all end up in 2008.
7% here, loss of 37 points or so. Apple shares are just getting hammered this morning. This could be the most serious recession in decades.
The first few days of a financial crisis make for fascinating television, as news anchors struggle with the abstract nature of the event.
Down over 16%. Dow at the same time has fallen about 18%.
Reporters struggling to be heard over traders screaming about graphs as if the x-axis might snap off and crash through the roof.
Traders here working the phone say a lot of their customers are freaked out, waiting to see how low the Dow will go.
While some anchors were forced even to lament the linear nature of time itself.
The opening bell is going to ring in 5 seconds, and to be honest with you, we wish it wouldn't.
When the crisis hit the UK, the event was initially referred to as the credit crunch, but that didn't quite communicate the seriousness of a global financial fuck-catastrophe. It sounded more like a budget breakfast cereal. While the event was blandly and conveniently rebranded, the banks who bought, sold, and created the credit what crunch were bailed out. Citibank themselves received a total investment of $45 billion and had $306 billion worth of risky assets guaranteed. But you know this story. Until very recently, it was the answer to the question, why is everything shit now? After the crash, for a while, banks gave up on pretending to be your friend, outsourcing their likability to Hollywood celebrities.
Limits were put on hidden card fees by the Obama administration in 2009, but this has just made the industry more dependent on interest for profits.
Credit card debt hit a record high for Americans in 2019, far outpacing the peak reached before the 2008 recession. Just before the pandemic, American Express had dusted off their old playbook to appeal to millennial aspirations of adventurous travel, or just their desire to escape debt slavery and go live in the fucking woods. Thanks for watching, everyone. That video was super long, so I'll keep this short. Thanks to all the patrons for supporting me. Look out for some new exclusive content soon. And don't forget to like and comment on this video, which is now over.
When the pandemic first sneezed into the world's mouth in 2020, we were all forced to spend more time online. After nearly 2 years of this shit, we're now a planet populated by Amazon-addicted shopaholics, OnlyFans synthoids, and Zoom-cool zombies.
I'm here live, I'm not a chat.
Meat Space is integrating with the digital. Our cars, fridges, and wrists are all connected to the cloud, and Grimes' ex-boyfriend is sending tweets to the most remote places on Earth and to the inside of a macaque's skull. Like a frog boiling alive in hand sanitizer, my brain has probably bubbled from too much late-night doom scrolling. Be that as it may, I've noticed some trends online this year that I want to share with you. Think of this as the ordinary state of the internet address. 2021 has been open season for scammers, shitheels, and the surveillance state. Progress, though, moves like a train made of lasers, which is scary for those invested in the past. Legacy media has been busy trying to claw back some of its declining influence, and dictators worldwide are trying desperately to clap laptop screens shut. Inflation went from being transitory to transnational, allowing crypto-fascists and crypto-crazies to propose conflicting futures for the concept of cash. Supply chains got rusty, Time magazine got musky, and the QR code made a surprising comeback. The internet offers so much opportunity for innovation and cooperation. A dialed-in population is more easily informed, but also more easily observed. So let's observe ourselves, observing ourselves, and start in January 2021. The year started off with a bang on the door of the US Capitol, as America's reenactment of the sacking of Rome was performed by the kind of folks who usually spend their days snacking on pencil shavings. Live streaming and self-snitching all the way into Nancy Pelosi's office, so the rest of us could watch democracy get upended live on Twitch.
Make sure that if you ever take over the Capitol or any other big place, make sure you bring a shield. You can't get this anywhere except for the cops' hands. All right, guys, thanks for watching.
While democracy was getting shaken like an unwanted baby in America, over in Russia, one man was checking its pulse. To the surprise of everyone, Russia's hottest revolutionary comedian and YouTuber returned to Russia after mysteriously being poisoned and put in a coma. One day after his arrival, Alexei Navalny was taken to prison and made to stand trial. Luckily for us, though, he'd already filmed some fire content. Navalny's video on Putin's palace was merely a collection of previously available sources and cool-ass drone shots, reorganized to be both funny and informative. Many Russians had never heard what Navalny was repeating, and more still hadn't heard it from someone that they could maybe sort of trust. The investigation and his arrest led to mass protests in Russia on the 23rd, making a strong case for independent online media's ability to disrupt traditional power structures. This is something that Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni was clearly conscious of when he cemented his 35th year of consecutive power, winning his 6th straight election after imposing a 5-day national internet shutdown. He was clearly rattled by opposition leader and Afrobeat singer Bobby Wine, who gained popularity with campaign songs what he sung himself. Bobby still hasn't conceded the election, despite apparently losing it by over 50%. He claims that the president used the internet shutdown to hide election fraud and widespread human rights abuses.
There's nothing to move on from in Uganda. Uganda is still under the tight grip of a military dictatorship under Yoweri Museveni.
Unfortunately, this is a growing trend over the last few years, as authoritarian regimes use internet shutdowns to suppress information. In February, finding video game content on the front page of Twitch was harder than finding a fart in a jacuzzi, as hot tub streaming was the easiest loophole to sneak nearly pornographic content on the platform. Jeff Bezos also announced that he would be stepping down as CEO so that he could spend more time with his rockets and muscles. At least in space, no one could hear him laugh. And muscles. At least in space, no one could hear him laugh.
In Australia, the government passed anti-tech legislation to calm the tantrums being thrown by media companies like the Murdoch-owned News Corp, forcing Google and Facebook to pay millions for the news content they were sharing for free on their platform. Facebook initially took down their newsfeed before relenting and throwing money at the problem in a friendly way. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of subsistence farmers in India marched on Delhi to protest agricultural reforms, driving tractors and themselves onto the highway on a violent collision course with the police. The Indian government reacted as they often do, by shutting down the internet in 12 of the districts with close proximity to the protest. Over the last few years, India has easily secured the dubious record of most internet shutdowns in the country, although they have been mostly hyper-local and never countrywide. On the 1st of February, this fitness influencer went mega viral after accidentally capturing the beginning of Myanmar's military coup on the 1st of the month. What followed was the arrest of the country's democratically elected leader and a near-total internet blackout to suppress protest and organisation, though this didn't stop 20,000 people marching on the streets of Yangon. Nightly internet blackouts followed, along with a temporary ban on all social media, as the military killed protesters in cold blood. Repressive regimes understand that their greatest structural threat is the free internet, and the brave young people of Myanmar are on the front line to protect that freedom. Meanwhile, the rest of us were using the unrestrained power of information technology to buy and sell pixel art. In March, Americans finally received their $1,400 stimmy checks from old man Biden, who should have probably spent his own check on a Stairmaster for Air Force One. On the online, though, dollars are just Disney bucks to be exchanged for internet money, bitch. The price of Bitcoin broke above 60K for the first time, as a month before, Reddit-based investors short-squeezed GameStop and AMC for all they were. GME is my home! Diamond hand pick! I'm never selling! I don't give a... Popular gaming platform Roblox listed on the American stock market, allowing investors to profit from the creativity of 9-year-olds. Child labor's gone digital, baby! But it turned out the real grip was selling JPEGs to tax-dodging Russian oligarchs. March saw the sale of Beeple's Every Days the First 5,000 Days for $69 million.
And we're watching the closing of the auction, which closes in an hour and 18 minutes. It's already at like a absolutely ridiculous $69 million. I'm going to Disney World!
Before this,
ridiculous $69 million. I'm going to Disney World!
Before this, Beeple was just a struggling digital artist, barely scraping a living the week before when he sold a 10-second video for a measly $6.6 million. Every Days became the third highest sale for the work of a living artist at auction, just behind an actual IRL painting of a guy in a swimming pool and a $91 million stainless steel rabbit. Boy, the art world gets my hammer and sickle senses twitching. What made Every Day such a bargain though is that it wasn't just one art, it was 5,000 arts. With such masterpieces as Tom Hanks fighting the coronavirus, Disney intellectual property regurgitated on Mars, and an Ocean Spray commercial. And if that bargain wasn't enough, it also came with its own non-fungible token. Back then, the Beeple sale represented the height of the mounting NFT mania, a trend that I sagely predicted would last about as long as the servers that NFTs are stored on. The great thing about digital goods, though, is that you can send them in an email attachment, unlike physical shit that you have to get delivered to you on giant, oil-guzzling container ships. On the 2nd of March, the Ever Given got stuck like a Dorito in the throat of the global supply chain. The ginormous teeny refused to budge from the Suez Canal, a tight, wet, slutty little passage that usually accommodates 12% of the world's global trade and 50 large ships a day. At first, the only team on the scene were an Egyptian digger crew, who had the gargantuan task of single-handedly saving the world's shopping basket. An international incident that the entire internet agreed was objectively hilarious. Heavy oil-guzzling container ships queued up for over a week before the ship was finally dislodged by the diggers and dozens of tugboats.
But the internet wasn't pleased, as everyone logged on to Twitter to make the same joke about wanting them to put the shit back where it was, congesting global trade and keeping us all amused, revealing the unconscious desire that we all had to continue to be distracted by this, so we didn't have to think about all the other horrible shit that was happening. In early April, Elon Musk's Neuralink put a computer chip in a monkey's brain and taught him to play Pong with a banana smoothie dispenser, which I don't really have anything to say about, I just really wanted to write that sentence. Besides, by the end of the month, a whole army of brain-dead primates had taken the internet by storm. The Bored Ape Yacht Club set sail on April 30th, selling 10,000 slightly different JPEGs of the same fucking monkey. Sales totaled at $2.8 million, as NFT grifters took to the open seas to sling their shit at one another and sell them for even more inflated prices. Despite looking like crudely drawn gorillas fan art, the Bored Ape Club proved that NFT mania was far from over, leading people like me to react to this with dignity and humility. April was also scam coin season, as the crypto frenzy of previous months birthed another load of shit coins from the internet's unlimited piggy bank.
Yeah, Safe Moon!
Coins like Safe Moon took off with the help of internet influencers like Keemstar and Paul. Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy also got involved, backing Safe Moon after much baseball hat-based deliberation.
The answer is Safe Moon. Why? I don't know fucking why. It could be a Ponzi scheme. I like the word moon because that's where I want to go.
Safe Moon subsequently clattered back to Earth as Trumpcake, along with 100 other scam coins backed by influencers. The crypto world has seen a broad repeat of its 2017 peak, where coin creators and influencers get together to pull the rug out from under their established audiences.
Bitcoin is so much more than a meme coin. It's a multimedia coin. Cartoon meets crypto. It's the blockchain, baby.
There's some things you still can't do online, but crypto Ponzi schemes still ain't one of them. There was less good stuff to watch online in May, as LiveLeak, the video sharing site where you can see Syrian sniper compilations and factory workers getting their shins turned to paste, finally went offline for good. RIP LiveLeak. In less sad news, Bill and Melinda Gates announced that they were getting divorced, and they've been having some difficulties since it was revealed that Billy Boy had been cashing cum coupons on the Lolita Express. Allegedly. But it was another billionaire who was making more headlines in May, as it was truly the month of Musk. After the nearly not explosive landing of the Starship SN-10 in March, SpaceX's 16-story SN-15 performed a perfect dismount on the 6th of May. Back in March, Elon had also launched the price of Dogecoin up 75% with a single tweet, only to send it crashing back down to earth again in May with his cringe-inducing appearance on SNL.
I keep telling you, this is cryptocurrency you can trade for conventional money. Your coin is
The price of Dogecoin sank, angering the most annoying teenagers on the internet and pretty much no one else. Elon also used the opportunity to announce that he had Asperger's syndrome, which the internet reacted to with a shrug and a collective, I feel like I already knew that. At the end of May, Elon's incredible Starlink satellite system was visible around the world, traveling across the sky like a celestial pearl necklace. And it is a terrific and novel way to provide internet access to the remotest parts of the world. Even though there's only 21 countries that can actually access it at the moment. And yeah, light pollution, blah, 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 whatever, but come on, it's the internet, in the bloody sky. I don't know, I thought it was cool. Even if you were connected to Starlink in June though, you may have had trouble finding some of your favorite